I pulled it out of other places.
But you're using liquid stevia too, which is better. I mean, the white powder is still so highly processed. It's got so many chemicals in it for the processing. It's ridiculous. So that's the thing about all of those sweeteners. They're all crystallized. They're all white. So they've gone through processing, because stevia plant is green. So, and if you can get the green stevia plant powder, then you're actually getting the nutrition from the plant too, instead of just the crystallized sugar.
Just take the leaves.
Yeah. Exactly.
I know.
Welcome back to the Christian Women's Health Collective podcast. We are so glad you are here and joining us today. We are in November and we are discussing sleep. Today we are going to talk to you about sugar cravings when we are lacking sleep, and we are going to have Bree open up the podcast today. Miss Bree.
Okay, sure. So are we going to talk about sugar then first?
Sure.
There was a question about our last video, what's better, stevia or sugar? So I don't know, fake sugars versus real sugar. And as far as the research that we have found at Flexible Fasting, the non-nutritive sweeteners, artificial sweeteners, all of those things are not as good as just regular sugar, but regular sugar has issues too. So we would recommend everything in moderation, and anything that you can find that is a very least processed. So like honey is the most natural sweetener that you can find out there. So that's one that we use a lot. And the like whole sugars, what do you call that, Leanne? You always call it something. Sucanat, which is the less processed sugar. It's very brown.
Actually, I just read about the processing of sucanat today, and there's no chemical processing to sucanat at all. It's all mechanically processed. They take cane juice and they put it into a centrifugal dryer, and they spin it until it becomes not crystallized, but becomes these little granules of sucanat, basically, and they're all irregular, and so you have to actually put it through a spice grinder to use it. Otherwise you get very irregular baked goods, which we have discussed. Sucanat is very, very minimally processed and only mechanically processed, no chemicals. Very different from sugar, and it doesn't melt well.
Yes. So those are, as far as I think those are probably the top two, because maple syrup even has quite a bit of processing to get to the point where it's actually syrup. They boil it down and all kinds of things. But
I would say on the honey though, to make sure that it's raw and local.
Oh,
because
100%.
Otherwise, if you've seen some of the honey, you know how it crystallizes in the top. That's because sugar has been added to it. So you want to make sure that it's local and it's raw. Right. It has, it's good for your allergies as well. If you do have allergies, it will help with that. So
the honey that you buy just at the grocery store is very highly processed, just like everything else on the shelf, unfortunately. And they're allowed to add corn syrup to that, a certain amount, and still call it 100% honey. So be very careful about buying honey at the store. If you can find a local source, I would highly recommend raw, local honey, unprocessed, if you can find it. But yeah, the other thing about the non-nutritive sweeteners that I want to mention is that people are like, well, it doesn't raise your blood sugar, but it does still raise your insulin levels, because there's a brain response to sweet taste. So your insulin levels are still elevated, and that is what tells your body to store fat. They still cause insulin resistance. They still destroy your gut microbiome. They still are not good for you. So if you're trying to eat those saying that they're healthier than sugar, I'm sorry, they're not. So
they actually make me very gassy. And from the studies that you guys sent me, they elevate insulin and actually keep it elevated longer than just eating sugar would.
That's true. They do elevate it longer than just eating sugar, because you're not getting the calories with it. So not only does it raise your insulin longer, but people who eat those tend to overeat later to compensate for the calories that they missed in that. So
could you reiterate what are non-nutritive sweeteners?
Oh yeah, sure. The things that don't have calories, like stevia, monk fruit, what other ones are out there?
Xylitol.
Erythritol, allulose. Yes, there's a lot of
Xylitol.
popular ones. Xylitol, that's another popular one. Yep, those are all what I would call non-nutritive sweeteners.
Inulin.
Because,
Inulin is
inulin,
being is
yes.
a trickery word right now in the sugar world.
Yes, because you wouldn't recognize that as something that would be a sweetener, but yeah, it's another non-nutritive sweetener. So a lot of times on these healthy keto non-sugar stuff, they'll have like 4 or 5 different sweeteners that are non-nutritive. They don't have to tell you how much is in it. It's just listed in the ingredients, and most people don't know what those are. So be careful.
Yeah, what I've learned about that is if they use, if they can add as many, I'm trying to say this right, they can add up to a certain point before they have to qualify it as a carb. So they'll add right up to that limit of all these different sweeteners, because then they still don't have to call it a carbohydrate. It's a trick of the FDA, the lovely FDA, and their processing.
Labeling.
And so if you can have, 5 milligrams of stevia, 5 milligrams of monk fruit, 5 milligrams of erythritol, and when you see all of those different sweeteners inside one keto-friendly product, just know that you're getting 20 milligrams and probably 20 teaspoons of some sweetener that's going to actually spike your insulin and keep it raised for a very long time. And your blood sugar will go up. I don't care what they say. Your blood sugar will go up. It's going to rise.
Yes, because you're eating it with other things that are going to raise it anyway.
Yeah. And so, it just is, it's disturbing, the prepackaged keto goods that you see on the shelves these days. And when I started doing even more research as a keto nutritionist, I was really disturbed. I was so sad. And I used to tout using those in all of my baked goods. And now I've completely retracted everything I've ever said about those sweeteners, because you have to use double the amount to get the same sweetness when you're baking with them. Double the amount. Yeah. So now you're looking at twice the amount that you would use of regular sugar and a higher insulin spike.
Right, which is going to tell for more fat. So yeah, I would say technically those are worse than just having something with a little raw honey, a little sugar in it, and just realize that those are still going to raise your blood sugar, and so you shouldn't be eating them all the time. And one of the things that we tell our fasters is that if you eat a lot of sugar and high carb diet, it's going to be harder for you to fast, because that raises your insulin, your glucose, and it affects your hunger and satiety hormones. You don't feel as full when you eat sugar, right? You can always eat more. And it does make it harder to fast, because it's addictive, and it's going to cause you to crave more sugar, right? Because it's easy fuel for your body. And it also makes it more difficult to go into ketosis, where you're fat burning. And so lots of times if you eat a bunch of sugar, the next day it's going to be harder to fast, because your hunger spikes are much higher, because it's like, oh, I gave you this hormone yesterday and got you to eat all the sugar, which was great, right? And so it's going to keep trying again to get you to eat all of that easy glucose access, instead of accessing your fat stores, which are for fuel and stored energy on your body. So yeah, if you eat tons of sugar, it makes it harder to fast, which raises your gut microbiome. Anyway, there's tons of risks of eating so much sugar, but that also leads into sleep. Let's talk about sleep and how that affects your sugar beans.
Yeah, I was going to say one thing about the honey also, which also helps with your sleep. So as somebody who has candida, it's honey. If you get the raw honey, it's not as sweet, right, as the honeys that you get from the store. And what I found is that I could have a teaspoon of that and not crave more sweetness. So I found that very interesting, that, it didn't make me go, oh, I want some more of that. It just that with the raw honey, it doesn't make you crave more, because the sweetness factor is lower on it. At least that is what I noticed. And so I wasn't constantly going back to have, I want just a little more of that. So, and honestly, it does help with sleep. So there is that, because it does have like a natural melatonin in it.
Yeah. I
The
actually started
foods,
using Sucanot to make chocolate for Tyler. So Tyler's favorite dessert is chocolate chip cookies. And so I started buying 100% raw chocolate bars that are just cacao beans. And I found one that got some vanilla bean in it too. But there's no cocoa butter, there's no milk solids, there's no sugar added to it at all. And I started using the Sucanot to make his chocolate chips for his chocolate chip cookies. And he actually loves those way better because I quit using chocolate chips a long time ago because they're not actual cacao based anymore. And then I started using cocoa chocolate bars, but even the cane sugar in those, he said he could taste a difference in using Sucanot sweetener in the dough and then the sweetener in the chocolate chips, the actual processed sugar. So I started this past week, I made him the chocolate bars using Sucanot, and he loves them and says that they taste so much more natural. So I guess my point is, while it is an extra step and it, feels like it might sound like it's a lot of work, the end result is such better health. And it takes 30 seconds to whip that stuff up together and heat it and then put it in the refrigerator and let it become a chocolate bar. So
yeah, I just want to add that. Imagine that the food that God created is actually healthier for us than the food that's created in lab. Can you believe that?
imagine that.
Huh. Imagine that.
Huh,
You mean God knew
Wow.
what he was doing?
Oh,
Huh.
amazing.
funny how
And the
people
interesting
want to think.
part is the changes that you made to the food, and then it tastes better. That's what makes the whole thing unique, is that you did make cookies that he liked, because most people would think if you added all that stuff, they'd be gross, but
Well, what I really did was take a lot away and make it whole foods,
plain.
true
Right,
whole
really.
foods.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Using real ingredients makes all the difference. Eating real food.
Yeah. So sleep and sugar, I will share this story. It's rather embarrassing as someone who focuses on the health and wellness industry and as a nutritionist, but not registered nutritionist, but nutrition certified. We met up in Florida. If you all have been watching our videos, you know that we were recently in Florida together, and I live in Alaska. And so the travel time for me to get to Florida is about 15 hours between layovers and time changes. And so we left our house on a red eye, and I can't sleep on planes. We got on the plane at 1 o'clock in the morning, and we landed in Seattle for a 3-hour layover to go to Florida. And then we had a 6-hour flight to Florida. So by the time we did all of that, it was 15 hours of travel. And no sleep on the way down. So I didn't sleep for about 40 hours between the time that we left our house and the time we got to Florida. And I was in Florida for a week before I met up with these lovely ladies to teach for my day job industry. So anyway, needless to say, carbohydrates were a huge craving for me because I needed energy, and I didn't want to sleep in the middle of the day because I needed my sleep schedule to be right for me to be able to do my teaching. So anyway, I had a ridiculous amount of chocolate. I ate Chinese food, which I never eat because I don't do MSG, but I knew I needed it. That's just, I was craving carbs, and I was craving anything that was bad for me that I would never put in my body. Never put in my body. And so I ended up eating Chinese food the first day we got there. We ordered DoorDash. And the second day we had Mexican, which was really good. And they made everything from scratch in the Mexican restaurant. But I had chips and guacamole, which is also outside of my norm. And then on the trip home, and we all ate a lot of chocolate while we were in Florida because we just wanted to try chocolate. But most of it was quality. And then, but on the way home, so there's this in Seattle, anybody who's familiar with Seattle Airport, in Seattle, there's a coffee bar in there called Dilettante, and it's, I think, local to their area. And so they do chocolate truffles. And yeah, I ended up eating sea salt caramel truffles, which again, sugar, just to stay awake for the flight home, because we didn't get home until, well, our flight got delayed for an hour and we didn't get home until after 1 in the morning. But I just, I ended up doing a 4-day fast a week after coming home because I just felt so toxic. And that wasn't all the carbs that I ate, but that was enough, right? Like just having to admit to that, and I don't have to admit it, but I'm choosing to, because even as somebody who's an expert in brain health, I don't do it perfectly, and I certainly don't do it perfectly when I'm not sleeping like I should. And it took me a week to get my sleep back on track, so this is just how important sleep actually is. Like, we have to get our sleep, otherwise everything gets thrown off. Diet, exercise, everything gets thrown off. And that was certainly my experience. Not to say I wouldn't meet you ladies in Florida again, because I would tomorrow, but wowzers. So that's my story of recent sleep deprivation and food.
Yeah, it does. I feel the same way, especially as a young mom, not getting very much sleep. I craved a lot of sugar, and in particular sugary drinks for that quick energy boost, and caffeine. And so I really never drank sugary caffeinated drinks before that. But when your lack of sleep and your body is like, I need to be awake. And I didn't really know any better at the time. I hadn't really started much on my health journey and learning what's healthy and what's not. So now if I was feeling really tired and didn't get very good sleep, obviously I would make sleep a priority the following night, right? But during the day, it would be harder to fast because I will be tired and having those sugar cravings and stuff. And so what I do now is focus on eating more whole foods that are going to fill me up and still give me energy, like a large amount of protein, complex carbohydrates, like a sweet potato or a whole piece of fruit, or like just focus on eating whole foods that I know are going to fill me up and still give me energy. And a lot of times it's things that are high protein and high in fat. So those are my strategies for when I have not slept well. And I will definitely be having a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked the polls this week, so that was for the election. And Monday night, I went to bed earlier to try to compensate, but like just when you have to get up for an early flight, you don't sleep well. Mm-hmm. And I had set myself up for success in the snacks that I took. And, I got up and I made, my coffee with my, with the collagen and whatnot and the MCT oil and everything for my breakfast, and had a smoothie that I made, took with me for lunch. And so I had to be there at 6 a.m. and worked until I didn't get home until after 8. And then we went from there to a party to watch the people that we had been trying to help get elected. And so we were up even later, and it was at a hotel in the restaurant. And I can tell you that, when I got there with all the stress of the day and the tiredness from the day and the whole day, that my choices were not as good either. I mean, I had a flatbread chicken with barbecue sauce on it, which normally I would not eat. I did have a salad with that. But yeah, I mean, it's like when you're tired, and when you're stressed out, which traveling or, staying up late and whatnot creates both of those. It just creates that combination of, you're probably not going to make good choices, or you're going to be weakened to, yeah, that sounds pretty good, I think I'll do that. So yeah.
Yep.
Time, I think too, like if you don't plan, if it's not intentional time that you planned on, what kind of food you're going to eat or how you're going to plan out your week, and then you're sleepy, it's easy just to go and just pull and just be a vicious animal to get anything in your mouth that you can. And usually if you're like me, you wind up downing all the bad things in the pantry. So
yeah. Because if we had stayed home, I had leftovers and we would have eaten healthier.
Yeah.
But we went out. And it is harder to make better choices when you go out. You can make better choices, but it's harder to eat healthier sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is. And go ahead.
No, I was going to say, could I have done better? Absolutely. I could have stayed with just the salad.
Yeah.
Right. And had a protein on it. But it was like, yeah, no. I've been good the rest of the day and I feel like it. So,
It's
I
important to
call it being
recognize
human.
those times too, where it's like, you know what, this is going to serve me the best right now. And I would definitely be eating some dark chocolate if I'm having a tired day, where I didn't sleep well the
Mhm.
night before. I'm gonna be having a cup of tea. I'm gonna be having some dark chocolate, and not have any regrets about that, and realize that I'm gonna focus on getting better sleep tomorrow, so I can make better choices. Like we're not all gonna
Mhm.
be 100% perfect on every day of the week, and that's why knowing the difference is important, and having those tools in your pocket to use. Like,
Mhm.
hey, even though I'm not gonna do it perfectly today, I'm gonna do better tomorrow, and it's gonna be okay.
Yeah. I think it's intentionality also,
Yeah.
I intentionally made that choice and I know that, and I'm not going to beat myself up for it. And we shouldn't, because we did make those choices and great. We are human. And, my intention for the next day was I ate all healthy. So it's like, making the intention of getting back on track and not staying stuck in that sugar roller coaster and caffeine roller coaster, and yes, getting the sleep. And I tried to get to sleep that night, and then the next day we had the hurricane and the power went out, and I was like, shut the alarm off and went back to sleep. And I didn't get up until after 10, and that's highly unlike me, but my body needed it. So.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
No, and that is okay.
Yeah.
You know,
when
when
we
we
do
need to
make
do
those
that.
changes, that's okay. It's good. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
I think the good thing is that you realize it and then we change it the next day, but perfection is not what we're looking for. It's,
Exactly.
the good
Yeah.
changes and to see what we can do better the next day and then wake up and do it,
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And don't beat yourself up
Don't beat
because it
yourself
isn't
up.
worth it.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Sometimes you just have to make it through those tough days, and if you made it through, good for you, because now you're here the next day and you can do better, right?
Yeah.
What's funny about that, what you said about the chocolate, was that I was like, the next day I went, I had chocolate in my cupboard and I never even had any. On that day, I was like, wow, because I totally would have if I'd have remembered it.
For sure. That's funny.
I was too tired when I got home, I guess.
Your body needed sleep more than chocolate.
Yeah. To forget about the chocolate. Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
What was wrong with me?
Yeah, really.
You were
must have been
tired.
dead.
But on the other side of that, I guess, it's also that the chocolate that I eat it's chocolate and it has, cane sugar in it, and that's it. And it's a very high grade chocolate. So it's not like I'm craving it all the time either.
Right.
So it's like, that's a good thing too, that I didn't even think about it. So I also consider that a win. Even though it's a good thing, it is a healthier thing, but it's,
Yeah. I always go for dark chocolate, but what I find funny is dark chocolate, it means something different to most manufacturers. So like, oh my gosh, dark chocolate and a lot of the candy bars just cracks me up. Like I would never eat standard commercialized candy bars. I always go for stuff. A lot of times I go for imported stuff, but like 38% and higher is considered dark chocolate to some of these companies. 55% and higher is considered dark chocolate to a lot of the companies, even the imported stuff. And it just cracks me up. So that's one of the reasons I just started making our chocolate at home instead of buying it anymore, because you just never know. But usually, 70 or higher is what I go for. I prefer it darker than that. What I've noticed is like we've already discussed, I don't have the cravings when I eat the really dark chocolate. Kind of going back to the lack of sleep, when I did have the week of eating a lot more carbs than I normally would eat, I noticed that it was a lot harder for me to come home and go back to keto. The cravings were pretty high. And I don't hide my addictive nature. I'm a recovering alcoholic and as it's, proclaimed food addict. And so I have to be really careful with those foods because they'll send me over the edge, and I'll start binge eating. So I have to be really careful with those. It's just fascinating to me because Tyler noticed, we were having a conversation this morning about how just anytime I eat something that's got more carbs in it than what I would normally eat, the first thing I talk about is getting back to my standard diet, the way that I eat that feels good to me. And I eat a lot less of the carbs. I used to eat this tub of popcorn. We've had the conversation about nutritional yeast. We know that that's an issue for me. I used to eat a Pampered Chef large stainless steel container of popcorn when we would have movie night and eat almost all of it. And it was just ridiculous, the amount of carbohydrates that I can put away. And I don't come anywhere close to that today. Like I'll eat just a few crackers or something and be like, okay, I got to get back on my keto. You know, I can't eat these carbs like this. So it is a mindset shift. It definitely plays into the amount of rest that I have too. I tend to gravitate much more toward carbs, and I'm 90% carnivore. So if I'm eating carbs, then I'm definitely off my game. There's something wrong. So yeah, sleep plays a huge part in that for me. Huge part.
Sleep is huge for health overall, and the more sleep that we get, the better prepared we are to make healthier choices.
Oh yeah.
For not just nutrition, but for our bodies and for our future and for life in general.
Yeah. Yeah. I got a great night of sleep last night, and I hadn't had one in a while, and today has been a good day.
Awesome.
It's amazing how much better you feel when you do get a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, words come easier, ideas come easier. You know, people are, you have more, just, you can roll with things a lot easier also.
Yeah.
So you're not on edge as much and make better choices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A better state mentally and emotionally.
Oh gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, I feel like the daylight saving this time it wrecked me because it was daylight saving and full moon, and it was bad.
It's been tough this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us for our sleep podcast this week. And we hope that you enjoyed getting to know a little bit more about non-nutritive sweeteners and how they affect our bodies and what to and not to eat with sweeteners. We hope we answered the questions that were out there about that we didn't answer in our podcast with our husbands. And we hope we gave you some good information on sleep and the cravings that you can have when you have a lack of sleep. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.